I'm Sami Bell, creator of Sure Parenting, and for nearly a decade, I've helped parents break generational cycles. The key? Reparenting. Over the years, I've also learned that this work isn't just for parents, it's for anyone ready to heal the lingering effects of the past. Most of us carry protective parts that take over during emotionally charged moments, and those parts deserve compassion, not shame. When you take an unshaming approach to healing, one that empowers your inner parent to lead with curiosity and care, you begin to make allies of all of your parts, the inner critic, the overexplainer, the avoider, the judge, and more. As these parts feel seen, heard, and understood, they can return to their original valuable role, supporting you, not sabotaging you, so your inner child can finally receive the love, safety, and rescue they've been waiting for from you. Hi, and welcome back to the Reparenting Realm. I'm so glad you're here. In episode 1, we talked about what parts work is and how our protective parts form. And in episode 2, we explored why reparenting is so important for healing those parts and supporting our inner child. Today, we're diving into what I like to call sneaky parts, parts that are a little harder to recognize because they don't always look like distress. They often show up as things like people pleasing, over explaining, or trying to keep the peace. I want you to know about these parts early in your parts work journey so that you're less likely to become derailed the way most of us have at some point. And if you get derailed by these parts anyway, you can know you're in good company, recognize what happened, and get back on the track of your goal. We're going to focus on two major types of sneaky parts, shame-based parts and enmeshment-based parts. These parts can subtly take over our lives without us even realizing it, and they can deeply affect our relationships, our sense of self, and even our ability to heal. So let's dive in. Some parts are easy to identify. You know when you're anxious, you know when you're angry, you know when you just want to avoid everything. But other parts are more socially acceptable. They get praised even. They seem helpful. Parts like the part that overfunctions when everybody else is falling apart, or the one that always apologizes even when it's not their fault. The part that says yes when your whole body actually wants to say no, or the part that keeps the outer peace at the cost of your inner peace. These are all those enmeshment type parts. And these parts look like we're keeping things together, but under the surface, they're often driven by shame or enmeshment, and they're exhausting. So let's start with the shame parts. Shame isn't just an emotion. In parts work, shame is often one of the parts, a protector part, that tries to keep you from ever being perceived as bad or unlovable. Shame forms very early. Maybe you got in trouble for having too big of feelings. Maybe you learned that making mistakes meant disconnection or even danger. Maybe in your family, love was conditional. In those cases, you became familiar with shame early on, and shame took on a survival role for you. It tells you, be good, be perfect, don't mess it up, don't need too much, don't take up too much space. You might recognize shame in some of these parts: the over-apologizer, the hyper-responsible fixer, the performer. And when pushed to an extreme, you can see a lot of shame in the avoider. Because shame doesn't just make you collapse your sense of self, it can also make you very defensive and harmful to your own stated goals. Because shame hates accountability. It's too risky. Accountability means vulnerability, and vulnerability feels like danger to a shame-based part. So instead of pausing and reflecting and taking ownership, shame will say things like, well, if they hadn't done that, then I wouldn't have had to. Or that's just how I am. I can't help it. Or you're being too sensitive. And then, of course, the most common one I hear is, well, that wasn't my intent, so you really shouldn't feel hurt. The part activated in that moment is trying to avoid feeling like a bad person, because back then, any time that there was a mistake, you could potentially lose your source of love and acceptance and connection. So the risks are so high. The cost is so high, at least to this part. And it would rather avoid that very painful possibility than face the accountability and the ownership required for actual repair. So when this part is trying to avoid feeling like a bad person, what it actually does is it shifts responsibility onto the person who was hurt. You should be fine with what I did because I didn't mean to hurt you. It blocks repair. If that person who you hurt is like, yeah, I guess it's okay because you didn't mean to, you have done nothing to repair. You have taken no ownership. You have done nothing to show up differently, to explore and analyze how your wires crossed in such a way that your intent was positive, but your impact was negative. You have to be able to do that work to understand how it happened in the first place so that you can build a separate path. But if your shame part is so strong that it won't allow you to dig into that and really understand it, then you're going to keep shoving the blame onto the person you hurt over and over and over again until they have to create a boundary and push you away and step further away and eventually out of relationship with you altogether. That is why it's so important to understand where shame is coming up in our systems. It is so important to be able to recognize, oh, shame wants me to avoid this right now. Okay, I'm not going to do that, but we'll get to that in a minute. So, shame hijacks the healing process. Instead of allowing truth and accountability to arise with compassion, it pushes you into emotional reasoning, defensiveness, or blame, often blame shifting, all in the name of avoiding the unbearable feeling of being bad. But you're not bad. That's the thing that we have to remember. That's the thing that was drilled into us when we were little, that we have to shift. Making a mistake doesn't make us a bad person, but avoiding accountability, avoiding responsibility, avoiding repair causes harm to others. And while we can still hold that we aren't a bad person, we are not then entitled to relationship with the people we're hurting because we're not a safe person. If we want to be a safe person, we have to be willing to face these parts that make us feel bad and learn to tolerate and broaden our window of tolerance for those shame parts. All of your parts are actually trying to help you. Sometimes we have to use that wise inner parent to say, yes, there would be a level of convenience to avoiding this shame right now. The shame hurts. I hear you. And the end result would be causing more harm. So I am not willing to let shame drive the bus. When we've made the choice to not let shame drive the bus, to not turn away and avoid, then we have to know how to reparent these shame-based parts. As with every part, we have to meet these parts with compassion and curiosity. We help them to see that accountability does not equal rejection. That being wrong doesn't mean being unlovable. And we can assure these parts that we, if no one else, we will always stay. We are here now and we're not going anywhere. When we did not have that security in our childhood, we spend much of our adulthood searching for it in other people. And the problem is they cannot meet that need. We have to meet it for ourselves. If we are trying to get that core need filled through other people, it will always feel unfulfilled. We have to be the source of security. Once we're through our early childhood, it is no longer up to our parents to fill that need. It is not up to our partners to fill that need. It is up to us to fill that need. And then enjoy healthy partnership and enjoy having our partner with us. But as every one of us knows, partners die. Stuff happens. No other person can always be there for us. Even if they're often there for us, even if they've been there for us for 20 years, it's not on them. It is on us to be there for us. We are the only person that we are going to be with forever. And we get to use that to heal. So to the inner critic, we say, you were trying to protect me from being hurt again. Thank you. I'm safe enough now. To the part that collapses into shame, we say, you don't have to take all of the blame to stay connected. You're allowed to be human. To the part that says, well, that wasn't my intent, to try to bypass responsibility, we say, intent matters, but so does impact. You can care about both. And if you want relationship, you have to honor the impact that you made, even if it wasn't your intent. We will honor the impact that was made, even if it wasn't our intent, so that we can learn and create the impact that we actually desire. We give these parts what they never had, someone to sit with them in the discomfort and say, you're still worthy and I'm not leaving. The inner parent, the wise, ego-free inner leader, is who comes into play next. The inner parent uses the power of noticing and quote unquote sitting on the bench with the shame-based part or parts. When you feel the beginning of shame, of blame shifting, which is a strategy to avoid shame, of searching for what outer cause you can point to instead of exploring where your power for change lies inside, which is a strategy for avoiding shame. You can use the inner parent to calmly notice and name those active parts. Notice how toxic that shame feels in your system. Does your skin crawl? Do you want to run away or escape? Do you feel anger coming up to defend you? Do you feel self-loathing peeking around the corner? Whatever is real for you, imagine there's a bench at a really beautiful, quiet park, and a wise inner parent is seated on one side. As that wise inner parent, invite those shame-based parts to come sit with you on the bench. You don't have to say much of anything. Maybe, I'm here. And just be with it. Scan your body head to toe and notice how much you dislike that feeling. Perhaps engage in a butterfly hug, right hand to left shoulder, left hand to right shoulder, and alternate patting your hands. This can help you stay in your body through the discomfort and provide cues of safety to your body, even as your parts scream that the shame is coming up and it's too dangerous. Every time that you allow yourself to sit in your discomfort, to be with it, to ride the wave until it naturally comes down, you stay in the driver's seat of your life instead of letting shame jump in and shove you aside. You learn that shame is just another part that you can build a relationship with. It's not something you must avoid at all costs. It opens an entire world of better healing and more relational growth for you. Can it be a challenge? Absolutely. It's one of the hardest challenges in parts work. Is it worth it? Absolutely. If you are aware of your shame triggers and you are aware of the strategies you use to avoid your shame, then you have a built-in pathway for more healing and more safe relationship in your life. Now, to talk about the enmeshment parts. Enmeshment happens when your sense of self is tangled up in someone else's feelings, needs, or expectations. It often comes from growing up in families where boundaries were not respected or where love and approval were very conditional. You might hear things like, I can't relax until they're okay. Oh, they're upset. It must be my fault. What did I do wrong? How can I fix it? I don't even know what I want. What do they want? These parts often take on roles like the peacekeeper or the chameleon or the emotional sponge. They learn to prioritize everybody else's emotional state over their own because that is how they found safety. When they were able to be safe, it was because everybody else was in a good mood. Everybody else was taken care of. And when somebody else's emotional state wasn't regulated, they were now in danger. So they had to learn this very early and very well. Make everybody else okay if you want to feel safe. And that created a level of hypervigilance that is very hard to let go of. When you are inside everyone else's emotional state, it is very hard to access your own inner parent. You're so busy managing others that turning all the way inward feels dangerous. And that's part of why it's so important to do this work. So, to reparent these parts, you need to reconnect with yourself. For some people, the time that they would have spent building their sense of self in childhood was spent scanning their environment so they could survive. Their best strategy in a hailstorm of uncertainty was to always look outward and gather details constantly about who they needed to be liked, safe, fly under the radar, or please their family. If that was the case, your job now is to build up and get to know you. What does that mean? Who are you uniquely? Some of the questions you can ask yourself: what do I feel? Especially if you are worried about somebody else's feelings. See if you can separate the two. Well, what do I actually feel right now about this situation? I'm telling myself I know what they feel. I'm mind reading here. But what do I feel? What do I think if I remove everybody else's opinion from this scenario? What do I want? What does my body need right now? What are my values? And am I aligned with them? Sometimes the answers to these questions just start with, I don't know. And we have to sit with them a little longer or um, stream of conscious journal until we can come up with an answer. Sometimes we have to try something and go, wait, nope, that wasn't it, and try something else. I have a journal called Knowing Me that's available for those trying to determine what values they want to embody in their lives. And I really recommend using a tool like this. It can be any tool, but I want you to look at a list of values and then tune into your body, and you will experience a full yes or a full no to some of those values. Some of them, they won't elicit much, and that's fine. Just skip those. But some of them, you will read the word and go, oh, that's me. That matters to me. So here's an example. Maybe for you, authenticity rings true as a full yes in your body. And then you know that your actions moving forward need to aim at authenticity. When you do work on the enmeshment parts, you ask, am I trying to control their feelings, their thoughts, their experiences? Or am I aiming towards my authentic experience, feelings, and thoughts? If you notice, and you probably will, that you're not aligned with your authentic expression, you can shift and realign. No guilt or shame necessary. This process is supposed to take time and practice. And then you'll likely need to sit with and soothe the panicking parts that were your former enmeshment parts. Because when you're aligning to your authenticity, you will very likely ruffle some feathers. And you grew up learning that ruffling feathers was dangerous. So now you're relearning that ruffling feathers is part of being an authentic person. And then, of course, you're going to need to practice boundaries. Once you have a better sense of self, you are going to have a better sense of where to place your boundaries. Remember that a boundary does not require the other person to do anything. Your boundary is what you will or will not do. And your boundary is placed at the distance that allows you to love and care for yourself and the other person at the same time. So if somebody is deliberately harmful to you repeatedly without any care, maybe your boundary is no contact. Because the only way you can maintain general well wishes or even neutrality for them is if they have no access to harm you again. You block them. You remove access. You don't just count on them to not call you again. You make it impossible for them to reach you. But then for somebody else, maybe you notice that you're feeling resentful or emotionally drained if you spend every day with them. So instead, you decide what amount of time could you spend with them and still enjoy their company without feeling drained or like you've sponged up all their energy. Maybe you decide it's once a week instead. So you set that boundary and you communicate that you are available on Fridays going forward. It's not about them changing. It's about you expressing what you are willing to do and choosing what allows you to authentically engage with them. Again, you'll need to call for the inner parent to sit with and soothe the parts that start panicking that the other person's going to be upset and they're going to be bothered and they're going to think things and say things bad about me. Just like with shame, you sit on the bench. You sit in the anxious discomfort and you let the waves rise and fall, and they get smaller and they get less panicked. This process gets easier and easier. And by being willing to walk head on into this work, you're gently teaching those parts. It's safe to have boundaries. It's safe to say no. It's safe to be misunderstood or misrepresented as long as you know that you are aligned with your values. You might say, it's not our job to manage their feelings. They're allowed to feel however they choose. We can care about them and stay in our own lane and not take their feelings and their emotional experience away from them. We're allowed to have separate experiences. You are worth advocating for. Your needs matter. It's okay to teach people what you need. It's okay to teach people how to treat you. And it's okay to change your mind. There will be people that you've been in relationship with for a long time that will be surprised. Why are you suddenly not coming out as much anymore? I realized that going out that much was not honoring my body's needs. It works a lot better for me to stay home some nights. When I do that, I feel healthier. I feel more rested. And I'm in this new phase of taking care of me. And most people, when you communicate that way, will go, oh, okay, cool. Maybe they'll say they miss you, and that's okay because they're allowed to have their feelings. Maybe they'll say, oh, I just thought I must have done something. They're allowed to think their thoughts. You're not responsible for fixing that for them. If they're mind reading and they're making a story, they're allowed to do that. It's not your job to change that. If you so choose, if it's authentic for you to say, it's not about you really. It's really about what I need and tuning into that and taking better care of me. By all means. Always remember, though, that you have a right to your boundaries. You have a right to take care of your needs. And it is not your job to make other people okay with it. It's just your job to do it. This is hard work, and it's liberating, and it's worth it. So as you work with these sneaky parts, remember, these were all adaptive. They have kept you safe. They helped you survive emotionally unsafe environments. But you are not in that environment anymore. You have access now to your inner parent, the grounded, wise, attuned part of you that can lead with compassion. That part can say, we're not in danger. We don't have to earn our worth. We can tell the truth. We can take accountability. We can stay connected. We can heal. We can allow there to be space and growth and change. We can learn what this kind of new relationship looks like and trust that it can be good, even if it's different and change can be scary. This is what healing looks like. Not perfection, but gentle daily leadership from within. So take a moment after this episode to reflect. What are one of the sneaky parts that show up for you? Do you notice shame come up? Do you notice that it's really hard to take accountability, that you want to defend yourself? Has anybody ever said that to you? That you're blame shifting and it's really hard for you to even see? Do you notice that you get wrapped up in other people's emotions, that if somebody is upset or bothered, you have a really hard time not ruminating on what did I do? What could I do? What's going on? I don't know. That not knowing is really unbearable for you. Try to notice these parts with lots of love and lots of compassion. Ask them, what are they afraid would happen if they stop doing their job? And really sit with it, because these are uncomfortable parts. Our logical, intellectual brain will go, Yeah, that'd be uncomfortable and just try to move on. Or, well, they think I'd fail. Okay. And then what? Stay with it. I love journaling, but if you're not going to journal, you can voice note, you can just speak aloud. Really stay in it and keep asking. And then what would happen? Okay. And then what? Well, what does that mean? What if that did happen? Allow yourself to explore and see what you can uncover. Whatever you uncover, you learn what you can face next with your inner parent to build your window of tolerance for the fear of that thing happening. And that's the work. Next time, we'll be talking about the inner parent a little bit more, how to access it and draw it forward, how it becomes the steady leader that your system needs, and how there really is a part of us that already knows how to be that leader. There's a lot of other parts that we want to learn how to teach and how to guide and how to help and heal. But there is a part in each of us that already knows how to be that wise leader. So the next episode will be dedicated to that special part. And I'm excited about it. I love the inner parent. In IFS, it's just called the self. But since I come from a parenting background and a ton of my own study has been in parenting, it makes sense to me to really view this idealistic parent that is able to meet all those needs that we really wanted met from our mother or father. And there's something very beautiful and loving and unconditional about that ideal parent. Thanks for listening. And remember, each of your parts has a purpose and your body wants to heal. When you get curious about their messages, gently witness their pain, and create safety through your inner parent, healing begins to unfold. Until next time, be kind to yourself. You deserve it.